All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. It is a good Friday night, weekend with BurnEye, I guess, and Real Science episode 27. I think it's actually 28. Mess it up every time, but hey, we're already live now, so 27, number 2. Welcome. We have Benjamin Balderson, Simon C, Exotic Propulsion, aka Jeremiah Popp, Frankie Lambo, aka Knights of Tau, who just stepped away, and front and center, I'm going to let you take it away, good brother Tim Ventura, and relaunching Apec, which my whole community and all of the communities are looking forward to.
Well, Bernie, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's truly an honor to be on your show. So yeah, I mean, basically, I'm just here to kind of promo the APEC conference, right? The Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference. This is something that, let me see, Jeremiah Popp, Mr. Exotic Propulsion down there, him and Mark Sokol came up with this idea, like 3 years now. And so I ended up basically being the moderator for it. But this is something where, I mean, it has just wildly grown, right? And we've covered all of these different just complete breakthrough ideas. I mean, like for folks who are into gravity modification, stuff like that, everything from like Searle effect replications to B field Brown effect to I mean, truly exotic, like the Horizon Drive, you name it, right? I mean, we've had I don't know, over 100 presentations, hundreds of PhDs, engineers, as well as experimenters, right? And so one of the things that makes it really cool is it's a community event. It's everybody's conference, and that's what I love about APEC, and I think that's why people are so excited to have it back. So
Absolutely, right? And it was an honor to be included into that project in the beginning, and it's just so awesome to have it coming back and to be able to continue the focus and the development of such things as hydrogen, like the fuels, the energies of the future that are going to be propelling these craft and the technology, and that the LENR, low energy nuclear reactions, cold fusion stuff, my own electrolysis experiments and whatnot, and diving deeper into it. It's looking forward to having the chance to do so in APEC.
Yeah. Well, if it's okay, let me pester everybody to register at altpropulsion.com. I'll drop my pitch there.
Yeah, do you want to maybe quickly put the link in the private chat, and then I'll share it in the live chat for everyone?
Yeah.
And Benjamin there, if you not sure if you want it to be live on your channel, but if you do, you got to hit the share with your audience in the top right there.
Yeah, so
yeah,
just
I did. I accidentally clicked.
Oh, you
on
did?
Twitter
Actually, you definitely did. I see it now. My bad. I see it now.
Yeah, I accidentally clicked on Twitter at first instead of YouTube.
Look at that. I spoke too late. There's the Benjamin Balderson Odin Alchemy family appearing right there. It's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah. So Bernie, again, thank you so much. If I could just get folks to register, even if you can't attend, register. We won't spam you. We send out basically one reminder and then one invite for each conference. So yeah, I mean, you're talking like 2 emails a month, basically. And we will put replay links in there. We'll give you all the info that you need. Again, this is a community event. So this is really your conference. This is everybody's conference. And so that's one of the things that makes it cool. One of the things that really makes it compelling right now is just this UAP situation is just exploding, right? I mean,
literally my elderly mom, I was over at her house, and like her other like friends, like childhood friends, another now elderly lady, nice lady, Mormon lady too, like nothing wrong with that, just spiritual lady, but she was first thing she asked, because she's been watching some of my podcasts, thus like the Apex stuff too, and like she brings up the UFO UAPs, and she's like, I was watching this on History Channel, how they're always coming out of the volcanoes, and like then gave me some more references of some more cases that were documented that I wasn't even aware of to check up on, and it's literally everywhere.
Well, and that metal sphere, that was in the UAP hearings. that just came out. So when Sean Kirkpatrick was talking, he gave a presentation talking about a metal sphere. In the notes, they said that there are a ton of reports about those as well. That's something that's kind of news to me. So first we had the Tictoc, and then they quietly revealed this metal sphere. And what's interesting about that was when I saw that, sometimes I'm kind of the slow kid, right? But so I saw that and it was just kind of in my head, and I was like, well, that's weird. And I was like, that's, to me, that seems almost like a perfect pressure vessel. Like if I was going to explore an alien planet, I would kind of want a spacecraft like that. There's a couple of reasons. One of them is, like, who knows, if you're taking it into the ocean or something, right? You're going to have all sorts of high pressure environments. And so it's good to have something that's structurally durable. But then the other thing is, if they have like a warp drive or something, which they presumably do from the performance that like Kevin Newth and others have talked about, if that's the case, you don't have to change the orientation of the craft to change your propulsion. And so when I was thinking about that sphere, I was like, that truly is kind of an alien looking craft. It's so simple and yet so, like, when you really think about it, so incredibly alien, right? Because everything that we build is like, like a tube with wings, basically, in one way or another. So
pretty much, yeah. Going from muskets to interstellar vehicles, it's kind of ironic, actually. Myself and Mr. Terran Earthling just earlier today, Tim, had this exact conversation about why propane tanks and other pressure vessels are shaped the way they are, and why the sphere is actually the most ideal shape of them all. From the bottom of the ocean straight to the depths of the vacuum, with absolutely zero change in the geometry of the vehicle.
There's some weird stuff. I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but maybe it applies. So I did an interview with I'm forgetting his name, Larry, last week from the SCU, and he did a study on UAPs and nukes, right? Which I think all of us are familiar with. The thing that got me about it, though, was when he was talking about UAP activity around like nuclear weapons and all that stuff, he said that it started during construction, not when the sightings, the increase in sightings started during construction, not after. And I was like, that's weird, because what that kind of says is that basically we're under surveillance, right? It's not like they're attracted because there's nuclear stuff there, and it's like a I don't know what you call a moth to a flame, but it's like, well, there's something bigger.
Or could it still be that, but that it was they arrived ahead because it was a time, like almost that they have time dilation.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe.
Let's just say we are being observed, right? Let's just say we are being observed. It doesn't mean that they're here only after there is some kind of activity, when there's a radioactive signature that's detectable. And let's say they have a Geiger counter type of system, 10,000 times more accurate than anything mankind has ever made. Regardless, no, they were there in the beginning before we even had brought those materials in. So clearly there's an awareness of what's going on from inside that's obviously bringing these things in well ahead of time. And that is a super fascinating thing. It makes one question, are these really outside entities, or is this more of an inside job, if you will? But I'm not going to speculate on which one of the two it could be. Just something to think about.
Let's just say that you saw a whole bunch of monkeys building buildings out of wood. Everybody would be interested in that. It would go viral, and it. It's the same thing.
I find it super interesting that then it's the hard ship UFOs are coming out of the ground or out of volcanoes. Like we know the Phoenix Light, supposedly that came out of the ground. I used to live by Shasta, where there's 1,000 stories of UFOs coming out of the volcanic tunnels, coming up out of the Mount Shasta. I find that super fascinating. And then the last week on spiders, we had a gentleman on who does biological. He's saying that a lot of the things in the sky that we're seeing, that as opposed to where these hard ships are coming from in the ground, in the sky, it's more biological creatures. And he has a whole bunch of points where it's like these things are like giant squids, and they're just got a very etheric body, not a lot of material to it, but there is some material. And there's been instances of where they call it like meat raining, where just flesh just starts raining out of the sky, and he thinks that's when these things die. You know, they're very long lived, but they die and then they come apart as they're falling through the atmosphere, as the atmosphere gets thicker, and they just come apart, and this whole meat stew just kind of drops onto people. And so I find it real interesting then that, you know, compared to his, where the ones that's up were more of a biological creature, where they're talking about anything that's an actual ship's coming from underneath. That's super fascinating.
And I just wanted to mention one more thing. Go ahead, sorry, Tim.
Oh, I was gonna say, you're making me flash back a little bit. A seagull got me 2 days ago. So when you said the meat stew falling on people, I was like, you know, and the thing is, he swooped and he timed it. It was this coat too. I had to wash it twice. It was, you know, and I'm walking the dog, walking the dog, minding my own business, and then I see this kind of thing coming towards me, and then bam, all over the shoulder, you know, and it splattered. And so I was okay.
That is not the kind of unidentified flying object that you want to come in contact with.
That was an identified aerial bomb.
It was identified after it dropped some evidence on your shoulder, unfortunately. But
these meat showers are occasionally deadly. So there's been instances where these meat showers, like I think there was one in Michigan, maybe, where like 67 people died from it.
What?
Like, because I honestly think that. Can you look at my cat?
I don't know. That's not surprising to me.
If that really happened, I'll take back my my laughing response to, because that's actually pretty horrible. But
there are cases of exploding whales.
Mike says it did it unintentionally. Yeah, it probably did. And that was what I was thinking. I'm walking the dog, and I'm like, what did I do? What did I do to you, Seagull?
You were standing on the ground, you pedestrian walking human.
Yeah,
I wanted to mention this too, though, before we get too far.
And stuff, like, it's not like a crow or a raven or a magpie like defending its nest or something like that. It was like seagulls. Oh, they're just shitty birds. There's no other way of putting it.
Well, before we get too far off, and since since Tim just reintroduced the resurrection of the Apec conference, I also wanted to say this too. The more that we get into this conversation about UAPs and non-local phenomena and the various other things that bring more questions and answers in this entire category that's been around, for pretty much since the 40s and 50s, right? The one thing that we really hope to accomplish in the beginning with the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference was the engineering side of it, right? How do we get answers to these great mysteries of the universe, these questions about, are we alone? Is there something else out there? And, how could we actually gain the ability to explore the cosmos? And so the whole point of the conference in the very beginning was, this is an engineering conference from the start. It's about testing ideas, not just simply about discussing them. And it's not about fairy tales and folklore or personal testimony. That stuff is part of it. And it's a critical part of it, because that's where we get a lot of our evidence from and where we have a direction to look into, where we're going to begin. But ultimately, what we want to do is bring this stuff to the lab. So we've really focused hard on trying to introduce as many experimenters, as many professionals, PhD certified folks, people that have worked in the industry, in the aerospace industry, and just about anything else that you can imagine, where something goes from idea to the grindstone. And so the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference, it's ultimately really at its core, at its heart, about engineering, about really testing this stuff and putting it to the grinding block to see what's going to come out of it.
And Jeremiah, if I could add to that, and again, everybody needs to remember that Jeremiah, this is him and Mark, this was their idea, right? So, but one of the things that I've seen is there are a lot of people who are kind of working independently, right? This is kind of an area where things are really siloed. A lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about their ideas. They're worried that it might be stolen or suppressed, or, this, that, or the other thing. And so one of the things that we're trying to do with Apec is reach out to those people and say, hey, there is a community where you can share and participate and get help, right? Because from an engineering perspective, one of the challenges is everybody runs into roadblocks, and so by being able to collaborate with other people, and one of the things, and you guys can attest to this, you'd have a discussion about building things, and someone would, they'd hit a roadblock and they say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, have you tried this? And Apec is all about that. I mean, that is an enormous part of it, and then one of the other parts too is we're trying to really showcase kind of the a lot of the big names that are out there as well, right? Like, so we had Roger Scheuer. You know, he talked about the Scheuer drive, that, and actually that got the conference featured in Popular Mechanics. It was in the debrief as well for that. You know, we've had, again, Searle effect replications. I think everybody is familiar with that. So when we relaunched this, David Perez is going to be talking about his device. So I was in a meeting with him last week talking about the conference. He said he's actually getting propulsion results and they're making progress with it, right? So I'm like, hey, that is awesome. That's what it's about, you know? And then I think a big part of this for me is we're trying to be like an open, non-judgmental, non-elitist conference, you know? I mean, this is something that for everybody who has an imagination and a dream, anybody who's read science fiction, right? Watch Star Trek and dreamed about warp drives, or, you know, I mean, all of those people are part of our community. And so my hope is that we can get everybody engaged. I have no idea where it's going, but you know, but that was APEC from the beginning. I mean, when we started it, it was like, remember, you know, like the tail end of the pandemic. And it's like, why not? We're all going to die. And then it turns out we didn't. So we just kept doing it. So.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. The whole idea that pretty much anything is on the table for testing. And it doesn't have to agree with the mainstream physics as it currently stands, or it can be taken straight out of the mainstream physics and be a fully testable idea. Stuff like EHD and MHD are completely compatible with our current paradigm in academia. And stuff that's really out there, like synthetic gravitation, differences between relativistic mass, inertial mass, gravitational mass, these sorts of things are all derivatives of a different kind of perspective that aren't necessarily compatible. But the fact that we can put all these things in one conference, and pretty much every single conference, and I'm very proud of this fact that we've had such excellent, amazing presenters where we bring up real experiments that have actually been done, lab tested and proven. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But the fact that they're actually being done and shown and talked about, I think is tremendous.
Yeah. Well, and then one of the other things too is I'm hoping that APEC helps to preserve these ideas, right? I mean, we've had like a few of the speakers that we've had have passed away from old age. And that's something, I mean, this is something that I've seen, right? Because I used to do American anti-gravity back in the day. And one of the things that I found was the heyday for this research really started in the 50s. Well, those folks are a lot older now, and many of them are starting to leave us. And so not just APEC, but conferences and events like this, number one, it's a way to honor what they've done. But number two, it's a way to help kind of preserve their legacy, right? Because, you know, like one of the best examples, I think, are those Boyd Bushman videos that are getting passed around, right? And
absolutely.
Yeah, and Boyd's not with us anymore. He's been gone, what, like 15 years now. But, you know, thank God at least some of what he did. Could you guys explain that more? Explain what?
I'll play the Boyd Bushman videos here at the end, or sorry, Frankie.
Yeah, and definitely honorable mention to Mark, because Mark McCandlish, which you may have heard of, the alien reproduction vehicle, it's a very, very famous case. Mark was a military aerospace artist. He did a lot of hand drawings, hand paintings for aerospace magazines and stuff like that from some top military vehicles and what he was allowed to release. But one of the stories that he got introduced to happened to come through a friend of his who had seen these alleged 3 vehicles while he was at this air show and happened to get brought in either intentionally or by accident, and seen these 3 large vehicles, which they had called, in his own testimony, alien reproduction vehicles based around some kind of captured technology. You know, whether or not they were alien in origin or whether or not they were just captured from another country, we don't know. But the fact is, Mark McCandlish had an amazing bit of tech, and he really, really got into it after this story, gone from basic animator into a serious investigator. And APEC was the last public show, as far as we know, that he had ever had a chance to talk about what he discovered, and he really got into the details of it. So now we finally have a record of that. And if it hadn't been for that, I wonder whether or not those last pieces of information would have ever been categorized and logged for future generations to look at. So he deserves the hugest respect and honorable mention.
Did he talk about Mercury?
I'm just looking up.
Absolutely. Mercury in the center column, kind of rotating. counterclockwise or left-hand spin through the
I already
center,
knew
and
that.
right-hand
I
spin.
wanted you to elaborate.
Well, and then there was Paul as well, and I'm forgetting. Well, so Paul Murad, who was a dear friend of mine, and he ran the Section F conference, which was the Breakthrough Propulsion Conference in STAFE, in the STAFE conference, right? And that was the big Albuquerque, New Mexico nukes in space conference, more or less. And they introduced this warp drives, anti-gravity stuff for 4 or 5 years. And so Paul moderated that. So he did that. Paul spoke at our conference. He passed like last year. And then there was another Paul, one of the fathers of electrogravity. And I was just trying to look up his name and I can't remember his name. Jeremiah probably knows it. Jeremiah, you remember Paul who spoke at the conference?
Geez, I'm not sure which Paul it was. Was he the fellow with the SEG replications that worked with the Russian affiliates?
No, and I'm gonna get myself again. I look horrible even not remembering. But
the truth is, it's been so big that it's outgrowing my human capabilities, even logging and categorically remembering everybody that's been on there because it's been so unbelievably huge.
Well, it doesn't help that half of them have biblical names.
Well,
that's true.
This, I mean, so people worry about suppression, this, that, and the other thing. These folks are passing of old age, right? And so for me, one of the things this genuinely makes me feel good is we're helping to preserve their memory and their legacy, even in some small part. It's like you can see the person who did the work. Because when I was a kid, when I was reading about this stuff, you guys are probably the same way, right? It's like you get a book, it's written by this person, that person, and you really have no idea who that person is or what their experience is. And there's information in that book that's really helpful. Maybe it's inspiring, but wouldn't it be that much cooler if you could actually meet this person and see them? Well, so APEC is at least one attempt to, put everybody closer together. So that's, I mean, that's kind of the idea with it, I guess.
And I do want to mention, talking about preserving the legacy of the greats that have been doing this for so long and are getting older, I want to really put a promotion out there for your personal channel, Tim, because you have done a tremendous job and invested a huge amount of hours logging those and doing personal interviews, which are really well put together. And if they haven't checked out your channel yet and people only know about APEC but haven't gone on to Tim Ventura, then they need to find that channel. So please also post a link to your channel in the private chat so BurnEye can show everybody.
Because
there's some tremendous interviews
sharing it in the live chat already.
Well, my channel actually, I may piss people off saying this, but I spent 14 years in real estate tech, right? When I got out of American Anti-Gravity, I got into basically that was after the 2008 crash, and I got into the REO thing doing software. I had a software company for that. And so I got into real estate, later worked for a coaching company. And there are some nice things and there are lots of nice people in that industry, but it is very much a transactional industry. And so I started my channel in part because I was like, I just want to have thoughtful conversations. And unfortunately in real estate, you don't see a lot of that. It's very much, I sold this many, I did this, I did that, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini, or a Lambo, and that's okay, right? That's their culture. But it's not deep and it's not thoughtful. And that's something that I missed. And so part of it was that, the other part, I feel stupid even admitting this, but I went through a divorce 1.5 years ago, and that was really difficult. And it made me do a lot of soul searching. And I was like, what is it that I want to, you know what I mean? It's like, what is it that I want to do that I can feel proud of? What is it that I want to do that, I can like someday leave behind for my daughter and say, look, your dad did something that mattered in this world. Maybe it wasn't big.
APEC is epic and you're doing the right thing, my friend.
Yeah, American Anti-Gravity started out already as a legendary idea and the legendary name Tim Ventura behind it. And giving credit to Mark, who flat out called it when we basically after Mark and I had our kind of less academic discussions and commentary at the Estes Park conference, and were told with no uncertain terms, you're not invited back because you're not coming from academia and you don't have the certifications. And we're like, well, screw it, we're going to do our own, right? And within 30 seconds, Mark said, there's only one person who can host, Tim Ventura. He's the guy. And I'm like, yeah, you think he's actually willing to do it? He said, no, absolutely. He's the only person that can do this. I'm like, you know what? You're probably right. So he was right. He called it. And also that the name, Paul LaViolette, which I can't believe I forgot his name.
Yeah, well,
Epic,
me too. Yeah, me too. And yeah, he is legendary, and he passed, right? You know, and I think
I didn't know that.
Yep, cancer. Yeah,
cancer. Oh no.
Yeah, that's tragic. And he went deep into alchemy research as well, didn't he? Or was that
he really covered just about every side of this?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, these folks are leaving us, right? And not in a conspiratorial way, just in the heyday of this research, when a lot of them made their names was, the 60s through the mid 80s, and so they're getting to that age. And I mean, Apec is one of many. I mean, there are lots of different forums that can help capture some of that wisdom, but that's one of the things that makes me happy, is that at least we're able to meet them, I guess, while they were with us. I know that sounds kind of dark, but that's something that I try and keep in mind. So, but yeah, I mean, all of this
light.
Stuff,
that's not dark.
I was
that's
thinking the same thing. It sounds dark, but this is really bringing the light to them. It's like, if they're willing to talk, please get somebody, please give them the stage.
But
only sounds dark in our weird society where we have this disconnection with any kind of spirit. That's the only thing that makes it dark. Like everything dies. Everything.
You mentioned American anti-gravity a minute ago, but like the technology that we have now is stuff. If I had this when I was doing American anti-gravity, I would have been able to do so much more back then, right? Well, and so, I mean, for all of us, this is such a tremendous blessing. I mean, just to be able to be on this call with you guys right now, right? And who knows, maybe, I'm not that important, but the next guy that Bernie has on, tonight, tomorrow, next week, you know what I mean? That
could be the guy. Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, back in the day when I was first getting into this, and I've been doing this for 23 years now, so it's been a while.
The guys and bringing the guys together. But yes, we definitely need a Crosby, Wayne Gretzky of anti-gravity to come up as a Canadian reference to what I am talking about.
It's shocking. Of all the people I'm working with now, Bernie, the major part of the group is in Canada, which is exactly why I have every intention of visiting you guys out there, and we're going to do one heck of a thing when we all put it together. But back to the American anti-gravity mention, see, after you got sort of some publicity, Tim, like your name was there, and American anti-gravity was there in the very beginning with J.L. Len, when there was finally some kind of public interest beyond my little backyard experiments that I was doing at 13 years old. And that was 23 years ago. And I got to say, American anti-gravity, whether or not anyone realized it at the time, whether or not you had any clue how much impact it had, was a huge part of that history for me personally. So it's just amazing how everything has come together full circle and become what it is today.
Well, yeah, and then it's, for me, it's interesting that the UAP thing is pushing all of this back to the forefront, right? Because it seems like that's what's driving a lot of this. People see these things happening. I mean, they're like, okay, now we have the government admitting, hey, guess what? UFOs are real, and it's like, well, obviously they're not rockets, they're not propellers, so something else. And so the stuff that we've been looking at for years and years and years, all of a sudden, people are saying, well, it must exist because UFOs exist, right? So
exactly, right? It's verified it all. They've opened Pandora's box. And once again, posted the links for both registering for Apec as well as to subscribe to Tim. I'm just going to quickly step outside and check out the moon and see if all the forest fires that are around me right now are actually, if the smoke's finally coming this way. It's pretty crazy, apparently, what's going on. And it's a full moon, so if it's in a position that it's half decent, I'm going to try to pull out the telescope and get it on camera, but I'll be for the second half of the show, but I'll be right back.
Stay safe, don't get burned.
What is Apec? That's what we're talking about right now. It is
the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference.
I'm just looking at the BC wildfire map.
Guys, just to clarify, alternative propulsion means not rockets, not propellers.
Yeah, do you want to share a screen, Tim? By all means, and plug away with all the things you want to talk about. If you hit present at the bottom and then go into share screen.
Oh, yeah.
And
well,
you can open a Chrome tab and share a bunch of things if you want.
Yeah, well, Bernie, make sure his house isn't going to be threatened by catching on fire by all means.
Okay, let me see. There we go. Oops. Oh, okay. You know what? It won't let me do it. It won't let me do it unless I exit. So.
Oh.
Well, you can exit and come back in. You'll let you
I'll
back
just.
in.
No, don't worry about that then.
Yeah. No, I won't. I'll do it another day.
All
you know, I like
gonna...
StreamYard. I've been doing everything on Zoom. StreamYard is nice though, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've got it on the next one. We'll invite you back, Frankie, if it's okay on Frankie's account. He could add you, or on Ben's account, although Ben's kind of full now with Zerdis and I. Anywho, to try out
I would love to add him.
Full features.
I don't know how.
Yeah, I can do it. So I'll invite you back, Tim, if you want to do another episode planned together in the future, but it'll give you like the full features of all sorts of crazy extra options and blowing minds.
Yeah, well, and I think I owe Frankie an apology for stealing his show tonight, though. So Frankie, let me apologize to you for stealing your show.
Hey, it's not my show. I have 0 followers in a brand new channel. I just need to be involved in this. I'm only here to be involved in this. I need to talk to you guys, you know. Please don't apologize to me, but I have questions, you know, and talking points. Have you guys heard of Kosarov's mirror?
Yes, the time mirror experiment.
Imprisoned for 20 years by Stalin. Yeah, did you see the Mr. Mythos video? Okay, so he gave me permission to play this.
Let me just take a quick look, and I'm going to have it open right here. Is this called Mirror is Breaking the Future, the 43-minute video?
Yes. Yeah,
I actually have it open right now, ironically.
Arctic. He gave me permission to play it on the show if we give him a shout out, you know, or like a link to his channel. He said he would be stoked if we did. So it's
100% play, because this is fascinating stuff. And if you gave us permission, I'll make sure to put the link.
We should just play his video.
And
it's a good hour long. It's a good hour long.
Actually, it's 44 minutes, so we shouldn't play the whole thing. But there are certainly snippets. So if you wanted to go through privately there ahead of time and find, say, the key points that you wanted to point out, and maybe shorten it down to 5 minutes, I'm sure we could push that in.
Good call.
I can do that real fast. Yep, perfect. Give me just a second, okay?
For sure. Tim, have you ever heard of the Kosaroff the mirrors, the time dilation spinning concave mirror thing?
I've never heard of the mirrors, although what I did hear was that Kosaroff did a bunch of experiments with like lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, and he found he believed that there was a force that was basically preceding the eclipse, and it wasn't electromagnetic, right? Because the eclipse was blocking light.
It's not electromagnetic. You're absolutely right. And it wasn't just him. Henry William Wallace had identified this phenomena with a strain meter, which was basically a very thin, very rigid wire. I don't remember if it was titanium or tungsten wire, but notice that during the eclipses, the tension on that wire and the pullback in terms of grams of force on these 2 points of this wire, which was constantly tensioned against a steel frame, would change, and the binding energy would change. In some cases, he even designed one to snap. And there were a long series of experiments by many people that had proved stellar events within our own solar system cause changes in binding energy between covalent structural bonds. And that's a really, really fascinating thing.
And nuclear breakdown as well, right? Like nuclear decay.
Yeah, Bob Green.
Yes, this is so huge. Please go deep down this rabbit hole.
Well, and the nuclear decay thing I found when I was reading about something else, and that was on a government website, and they were talking, and so I took that as being like that surprised me, right? Because, usually they're really conservative about their credibility. And so I'm reading through this website and it was like, okay, these, nuclear decay has been proven to change, depending on, I think it was like solar output, solar eclipse, something like that. And I was like, interesting,
Yeah, these guys aren't exactly easygoing about releasing stuff like that. So when they do bother to actually point something out and release it into the public domain, it's because there's solid, rock hard evidence behind it. And that is really, really demanding our attention.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this just shows that we do not know as much about science as we think we do. You know?
Let's just look at gravity probe B and the frame dragging phenomena. Gravity doesn't head straight out in a direct 90-degree tangential vector from the Earth's surface. It actually has a bit of a twist because the Earth is spinning. And that's what gravity probe B discovered.
The thing that gets me, though, is, I mean, not all, but there are so many, well, and it's always been this way, right? But, I mean, you have a lot of people in science who treat it like it's the church. You know what I mean? It's, it can't be wrong. It can't be changed. They're on the right path. We know everything, and then everything just gets flipped upside down, right? So,
the dogma is parasitic, like a virus, and that's the purpose of Apec, is to basically break down the barriers that prevent free and open discussion about these dogmatic ideas, so that we can really get into the meat and potatoes of whether or not these things are valid and whether they should still be honored.
Sorry to butt in. I was outside, and that light right there, that is what I suspect and have been calling the Death Star, or possibly this Planet X Nibiru thing.
The one right center screen, Bernie? The one that we're looking at dead center of your camera view?
Yeah, dead center. And it's big and huge in
it's flickering.
And I'm going to get my telescope out right now and focus in on it, and you'll be able to see it through my camera or my phone and to the stream, and let's see what it is. Because last time I put my telescope on it like 6 years ago. It was like a giant burning ball of redness that kind of creeped me out. So I was looking for the moon, but it is in the other part of the sky still. But this guy's still up in the horizon, not setting yet. So I will be right back in, and then we'll take a look at that. I just wanted to record how bright it was on camera, and that you can actually pick that up is pretty.
You can actually see it. You have a pretty good night camera there.
This is just a Galaxy 9. Can't wait to switch over to my Galaxy 20.
Oh, there you go.
There's a 20 now? Man, I
There's
give
22. Up. I think it's up to 22, actually.
I give up.
But it has 100x optical digital zoom combination, I believe, which is pretty crazy, especially when putting it through the lens of the telescopes, and that they focus really well in capturing through real telescopic lenses. But Tim, please do continue with the good.
Again,
descriptions as I go back inside.
No, I mean. I would say, again, let me just drop that link. Altpropulsion.com. If they could visit altpropulsion.com. And like our goal this year is to really blow up the conference. And part of that is because the more people that we have involved, the more people collaborate and exchange ideas, And again, this isn't a paid thing. We're not charging money for people. We store your email securely. We don't spam. We don't rent our lists or anything like that. The whole idea is just to bring people together who have an interest in this, who have an interest in UAP, who are interested in the science and technology, right? So again, if you've watched Star Trek and you've wondered how does a warp drive work, we've got people there who are describing, we've had 4 or 5 that come to mind immediately, who have described variations on the Miguel Alcubierre drive, right? Which is the Star Trek warp drive. So I mean,
in a manner of speaking, we can tell you for sure, though, and based on experimental evidence by both myself and I can count at least 4 others who I personally know have worked on this stuff. It does not require a Jupiter mass to modify the variable refractive index of the vacuum, and that much has been pretty well established at this point. Now, exactly what those numbers are and how nonlinear the response is, now that's still up for debate. But what I can tell you for sure is it doesn't require a Jupiter mass, and it can be done with positive energy, as Lenz had figured out.
You know, I'd read a paper a long time ago by Eric Davis where he'd talked about what was it, spinning a wormhole, spinning something like that. This negative energy that's supposed to be required for some of these drive systems. He had said that basically you could use that by spinning open like a wormhole, and that would create negative energy inside of it, right? So you could use the positive energy to create negative energy, and it wouldn't require as much as the traditional calculations say. So
yeah, we're going to have to reformulate a lot of the mathematics once the solid data comes out.
Yeah, it's like these little cracks in science, right? And they add up, and then eventually the whole mirror breaks. And it seems like it's kind of getting there.
Well, that's what's really important, is that we're also sharing the things that don't work, and we can figure out why they don't work.
Like how inefficient our energy grid is, and the ridiculousness, and how it should be closer to 50 hertz instead of 60, and all the West. But I just wanted to reassure Tim and Jeremiah and everybody out there that's actually into astronomy that when I'm claiming this is the Death Star, Planet X, possibly Nibiru, whatever the heck, dwarf something or other, Nemesis, that I have been an amateur astronomer my whole life, and I've got a telescope that is like a 10-inch diameter, I guess, pretty decent size, like 5 feet tall, 4.5, 5 foot tall, and then double like the 50 lens, and then like the multiplying it, so 2 double lenses into it. It's pretty decent. So like I've captured like Saturn with its rings and a bunch of its moons, Jupiter with a bunch of its moons and stuff, and like a couple of the lunar eclipses in the past.
This is not surprising.
So if you can see stuff like that, what happens when you focus on the moon? What's the how much resolution can you get on the moon?
Oh, pretty good. And with like the newer phones that can like zoom in even more on it, it's going to be ridiculously epic. And if you haven't seen Bruce C's All's work or channel, he's an amateur astronomer out of Montreal, and several people have been mentioning him in the chat so far this episode, and it's actually crazy. He catches a lot of UFO UAP phenomenon going in and out of like the surface area of the moon on the regular.
I've seen photos of that online, but you know the problem online is it's hard to know what's real and what's CGI now. I mean,
yeah, I've been following Bruce for about 8 years now, so it's like he's been doing it for a very long time, and like he's a pretty legit guy. Shows like himself taking like filming it like through his telescopes and all of that, like the processes, and like doing some live streams of it. And
I mean, the other thing that I would look for is artifacts. That's just maybe I'm wrong,
right? If you can get it up,
but I mean, if I was an alien and I wanted to spy, you know, I mean, let's say they were just passing through, even, you know, somebody's just passing through and they're like, hey, this planet looks interesting, you know, and it's maybe it's dinosaur era.
Ross, email me immediately and I'll send you the link so you can join in, brother. And artifacts on the moon, what do you make, Tim, of that Apollo 20 or 22 that was like released on the internet, like right around the start of YouTube? I swear it was like one of the first, and it was like this video of this joint US Soviet or Russian team, I think it was Soviet team, going to the moon and coming across this 3-mile long like cigar shaped craft that they like landed on, and then like orbited a couple times, and then apparently that it's right at the border of the dark side and the front side of the moon, and that you can actually see it with the lunar coordinates on Google Moon or whatever the heck it is.
I didn't see that one, but I'll look now. I've never seen that one.
Oh, it's actually pretty fascinating, and it's been around for a very long time. So if it was like a fake, they put a shit ton of money back like into it a lot, like at a very early time period, like in compared to what they do now. You know, like
again, it's hard to. I mean, it's so hard to tell. I've seen UFO videos though with like telescope videos, like you were talking about taking, that show like UFOs on the moon, around the moon. Who knows? I mean, you know, and then for me, I'm just like I don't know. It looks real to me, but you know.
So Crow is fairly famous. Crow from Crow 777 for having done a bunch of different videos of the moon, and he's gotten a number of things.
I was also going to bring that up. The lunar wave. The lunar wave.
And he found the lunar wave. Yeah, he's the person who found the lunar wave.
Has actually captured a lunar wave event as well, like in all of his backyard astronomy, I believe.
I think he might have actually captured it on Jupiter, going over Jupiter, because there's actually been a whole bunch of recordings of the lunar wave now, and I think there's 3 other luminaries that they've caught it over, where just 2 weird lines just slowly pass over it as you're sitting there, and like the damn TV went out of fucking focus and pass over it, and then it's gone. And then he's got a number of videos of craft or something moving very oddly that are not satellites. Those are pretty, or satelloons or whatever. Those are pretty easy to spot. I live out in the mountains. It's pitch black out here. These things are real easy to tell the difference. The only one that'll mess you up sometimes is drones, you know, because they're so small and they can move so oddly, and they're so advanced at this point. Those will fuck you up a little bit sometimes, and you can't hear them.
Apparently, Buck caught a Earth wave yesterday on the radar too. And so I'm gonna go grab my telescope and try to get this, because I can actually connect it to the live, and we'll see what it is. It could just be Jupiter or Saturn, but it's a very bright planet, and it's been a few years since I had seen what I dubbed the Death Star last, and we'll see if it is.
Okay, I'll be right back too.
I have that video ready if you want.
Yeah.
Trey Clark just said that. Yeah, Jupiter is the other one, and then they have a number of them. Crow's got a movie. It's called Shoot the Moon, which is based on the lunar wave, where it's just thousands and thousands of hours of just leaving his telescope perfect and recording it and going through it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Frankie, by all means. So the video of the mirrors there is what you got queued up?
Yeah, you get Ross's email already? I mean,
I've already sent it to Ross.
Yeah, get on here, Ross. Come on, buddy.
And absolutely, let's play this here, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Good call, Frank. Oh, it was up. What? You're hitting the wrong one. There we go. You got her. You figured it out.
Quote, a mirror can be made that can bend absolutely anything, including time. Time travel is possible through a mirror. End quote. He wasn't being metaphorical. Nikolai Kozyrev really was serious about using a mirror. And stick with me here as I try my best to explain. To begin, the astrophysicists propose that light and time are so different from one another. Just as light is a type of energy, Kozyrev came to the conclusion that time is a type of energy too. And similarly, with light, we can only perceive a fraction of a much larger spectrum. For example, infrared and ultraviolet light are invisible to the naked human eye. And according to Kozyrev, time energy works similarly. The full spectrum of time, the past, present, and future, all exist simultaneously. However, under normal conditions, we perceive present time. And back to the mirrors, a mirror doesn't technically reflect light. It actually bends light and changes its direction due to the material the mirror is made out of and its design. So accordingly, with the right setup, it may be possible to bend and direct time, too. Kozyrev's wild theory led him to be disgraced by some of the Soviet Union's leading physicists, and sparked a decades-long debate over whether his theory should even be tested. Without any funding, Kozyrev used the little savings he had to continue developing his theory and experimenting with different metals. Finally, he settled on a mixture of several special grades of aluminum. Melting them into a thin sheet, he proposed that the key would be to forge the sheet into a concave mirror. Today, concave mirrors are used in modern technology, astronomical telescopes, electron microscopes, and solar-powered heaters to gather in and focus a significant concentration of light. And this property of concave mirrors has been known since ancient times, such as in 212 BC, when the mathematician Archimedes designed a giant round mirror to concentrate the sun's rays and incinerate entire fleets of wooden Roman ships. And this was exactly what Nikolai Kozyrev had in mind. Even more jarring than the concept of time bending, Kozyrev wanted to build a time concentrator. In the last years of his life, he proposed a simple but device to take full advantage of the properties of concave mirrors. A long sheet of his aluminum concave mirror could be rolled into a perfect cylindrical spiral, then placed upright, leaving room inside for a person to sit. Finally, the device would be rotated 1.5 turns clockwise. Time energy would be captured by the opening and become more and more concentrated the further it flows into the spiral. So, theoretically, the person sitting in the pool of concentrated time energy would suddenly exist in multiple points in the space-time continuum. Simply put, they'd gain access to the past and the future at the exact same time. Unfortunately, Nikolai Kozyrev was never able to build his time concentrator, nor further his research. In 1983, his health abruptly declined in a matter of weeks, and on the 27th of February, he died, the cause unknown. After Kozyrev's death, his theory bending and concentration were brought back into the public spotlight. They were still highly controversial, now with a greater air of intrigue. By almost all measures, Kozyrev was a scientific genius. So what if he was onto something? Just a handful of years after Kozyrev died, the Soviet Union began to collapse, and a deep societal change was on the horizon. President Mikhail Gorbachev had enacted several major policies of openness, which allowed for far more freedom of speech and democracy. As a side effect, this also opened up the possibility for serious scientists to test the strange experiment proposed by Nikolai Kozyrev. In fact, the government-operated Russian Academy of Sciences was ready to fund it. And this brings us back to the scientists who received that funding and built the world's first Kozyrev mirror, Dr. Vladimir Kuznetsov and Dr. Alexander Trofimov. And based on their results, the mirror actually worked. But what they saw in there wasn't pretty. In December of 1990, Kuznetsov and Trofimov transported their Kozyrev mirror to a small remote village known as Dikson, one of the closest permanent settlements to the North Pole. This location was chosen intentionally, as Trofimov explained, quote, "The permafrost zone surrounding Dikson stores information from many..."
What do you think about this? Should I continue?
I think it's really interesting. I think that's an interesting clip.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the choice of materials is actually rather important in this, far more than maybe immediately obvious. This isn't just simply about which photons are reflected based on the material, because different materials do reflect different photonic wavelengths, especially in the metals, more or less efficiently, depending on their absorption or reflection. But this has to do with the nuclear magnetic properties of said materials, and aluminum is one of those that has a capability of being spun up to a very high degree and attaining a large amount of nuclear magnetic resonance. So it's been a prime choice for research for quite some time, and goes well back before Elzephon.
Is it the perfect Faraday cage?
It's certainly not the perfect one, but aluminum in combination with a variety of other materials, which are odd integer spin nuclear isotopes, which have a high abundance percentage, happen to be very useful for this research. And among those included is magnesium, mercury, tantalum, gallium, germanium. Well, not gallium, germanium, and there are several others which have lesser integer spins, which are still quite useful for this, but are harder to obtain. Even uranium technically is on that list of odd integer spin materials with some percentage of abundance, which can be used for this purpose.
And I lost my train of thought.
Interesting, right?
Telescope, Bernie.
The telescope, yes. Aluminum. Okay, about aluminum, it's a fascinating substance, and like when I turn it into the monoatomic, like the fluffy material, it separates and creates separate exclusion zones more than the rest, and like defies buoyancy, and like it'll keep active for like months after being sealed in a jar with no energy going into it. It's quite fascinating stuff how reactive it is. And then what I was gonna say about my telescope that I'm about to set up outside and whatnot, if for some reason the stream goes dead or I get gas exploded, aka drone strike, then I guess Planet X is real. Otherwise, hopefully we're just gonna get a big good view of Jupiter or Saturn right now.
Yeah, if you were that worried about it, I would say you would have sent me an invite to the admin hosting link from Balderson's Odin Alchemy.
We're on Frankie's tonight.
Oh, are we?
Yes, sir.
I see Ross Small. I haven't seen Ross in a long time.
Oh, right, Ross. Yeah, Ross is another Apec participant who is working heavily on inertial drives. And he has quite a bit to contribute if he wants to get into it. I guess that's up to him.
Yeah, you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Bernie, are there any the monoatomic things going on with the weird planetary alignment? There's a bunch of planets lined up. It's an eclipse.
So for the second half of the show, because we're 1 hour in, I'm going to do first the telescope thing here while Tim Ross and Jeremiah discuss the latest updates. And then for the second half, I'm going to set up a new monoatomic silver experiment specifically because it is a full moon, and that I have had this correlation that when it's the alchemists put silver as the moon, as the heavenly body or whatever, and to the element. And for some reason, when you make monoatomic silver, where you have a 1 ounce silver coin as your anode, 1 ounce silver coin as your cathode, and you leave it running for more than a month, you will actually notice that the production rate and breakdown off the anode side of the monoatomic silver precipitate actually increases exponentially during the full moon and the lead up to the full moon, and decreases exponentially in production as the moon waxes and wanes. And what originally got me into understanding this observation and discovery was during a super moon, and it filled the entire container bucket that I had this reaction going in overnight when the super moon happened, and it was just a ridiculous amount that formed. And I actually need to do further real tests on this, and also in the aspect of the ratio of the monoatomic mass of material powder that's being formed, and the possibility that there's extra mass being manifested, especially during that supermoon or full moon time, compared to the actual mass breakdown off of the erosion off the or corrosion of the anode side.
The other thing I would like it if you would be able to do is while you are checking that, if you would set up a small solar setup during the full moon. The moon actually gives off voltage. It doesn't give off any amperage in any way, but my solar setup, yeah. So
let's keep in mind the absorption spectrum, right? The absorption spectrum of different solar panels. That's going to change depending on what wavelengths of light are actually making their way through the atmosphere. And because we have a generally blue attenuation, we know that a lot of the deeper reds are being absorbed by Earth's atmosphere. And I guess absorb isn't really the right word, but I would say more so deflected. Just like when light passes through a prism, when you pass white light through a prism in different wavelengths, longer wavelengths travel off at a different angle than shorter wavelengths, we get generally the blue. So we look at the sky, we see it blue. This is going to obviously have some effects too. So during a full moon, you have the maximum amount of light. You're generally negating almost all of your deep reds. And so you would need a solar panel more idealized for picking up that blue and UV wavelength. And they are available
that
too.
Blue UV, that cold electricity compared to the infrared. That's what and light. That's what I find fascinating, and I think there's major parts of.
Yeah. So Bernie, while you're setting up, if it's okay, I want to hear what Ross is up to. Ross, give us an update. What are you working on, man?
Real quick, like Bernie, how much silver do you have?
It's classified. He can't tell you. Lots.
Like I go to the thrift store like every day. If you go to a thrift store every day and you like search, you can find the sterling silver. This is like a whole entire bag of sterling silver that I probably got for like $50 in total.
What?
You're not gonna find that in my city.
You got that much?
We've got like poachers that are literally there pretty much.
That is a heck of a score,
They
Ross.
scalp that stuff. They do.
See, look at Washington D.C. Oh, no big deal. We'll just discard our sterling silver.
Oh yeah, Washington D.C. Like these rich people, they just go to the thrift store and to the back, and they throw all their like sterling out, and then they just like the people that work there don't even know. Like they just put it out like it's plated. And then I'm like looking through and I'm like, oh, it's sterling. And I just like, oh, 20 cents, 50 cents, like a huge like thing of it's ridiculous. I mean,
really good. But I have to warn though, for making the monoatomic silver specifically, if you're going to then be making it for the purpose of the colloidal silver water byproduct and using it and consuming it, that sterling silver doesn't usually work too well because it's an alloy and the other metals.
I'm going to flat out say this, Bernie. I'm sorry to disrupt you, but no, sterling silver doesn't just simply not work too well. Do not ever consume any
poison yourself.
Solution made with sterling silver. Never.
Well, almost instantaneously every time you make it with sterling silver, as opposed to the pure ounce 99.99 or whatever, you'll notice that it will actually instantly oxidize and form into the blue diatomic material and mass, as opposed to the white monoatomic mass. But yes, there's also like some sterling has like lead in it, which will then definitely kill you. And yeah, so just not a good idea to
yes, sterling silver contains 7.5% or greater of other metals. It can contain copper and a variety of unknowns. Never, ever use sterling as something that you're going to consume if you're going to do electrical basis colloidal suspension silver. It's got to be 3 nines pure at the minimum. And actually, ironically, you can buy coins that are cast. They're not official minted coins. These are, after party pure silver artifacts that will be fully suitable, and they're actually a lot cheaper than say buying silver wire, and those are fine, but it's got to be 3 nines or more. Otherwise, if you don't want to turn blue, basically there's 2 things. One, never add a salt to your colloidal silver solution. No salts. It takes about 75 to 190 volts in order to create a genuinely colloidal silver solution. And remember, colloidal means that these individual particles of silver that break off the major part of the anode and collecting the cathode, they're going to be suspended freely because they're electrically charged, which is why you need the voltage. And salt water is conductive, so you can't really make consumable colloidal silver using a salt solution or an electrolyte solution. It has to be done in pure distilled water, and ideally, if you really want to do it perfectly, it should be done in deionized water. This is how I make it, and I use about 150 volts. And I do it in pulses. So when I break it apart, I get about 7 nanometer size consistent particles, and they are quite golden in color. The shelf life on the product that I make is roughly around 6 years. And I use product very loosely because I never sell it and will not sell it, but for personal consumption.
Right, neither do I. But you're actually describing a far more superior technique and precise technique that I'm kind of jealous of and need to step my game up in making mine into more refined part of electrolysis and what you're doing.
I just want to say, Ross, that is beautiful, man.
Goodness sake, is it ever? Wow, and I am loving this.
Right? Absolutely. Sorry, Tim, I'm stealing your thunder, but this is the APEC pre-party, so I can only imagine how much better it's going to be.
This is like, this is basically what Brian St. Clair is working on, but it's not. His is triple plated. This is a double plate. So there's a plate here and the plate here, an X plate. We call these X plates, an X plate, and then another X plate.
It's very Macwan 1, Ross. It's very Macwan 1.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, when I first built this, like I didn't realize there's supposed to be 3 plates. Like, okay. And I talked to Mike Marsden later, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's supposed to be 3 plates. There's a hidden 3rd plate in the middle."
You got to talk with Mike Marsden? Seriously?
Oh, I talk to him like regularly.
Wait a minute. Oh, please get us in contact.
Well, could you add a 3rd plate, or do you not need it? Did you design around it so you don't need it? Or?
No, this is kind of like a wreck. I mean, this is kind of a wash. I mean, I'm not going to really do. I just kind of like built it, and then I was like, shit, I need a 3rd plate.
No, so, I think it's cool that you built it, though. I think it's a cool device.
I mean, I don't know if it would work like even with just 2 plates. It probably needs 3. But that's what Brian St. Clair did, and he actually got thrust out of his, very recently. So he's like on board. Now he knows this is not bullshit. This really does work.
Brian's doing good work. I've definitely checked out his work quite in depth, and I can say from personal opinion at minimum that I think that he's going in very much the right direction. And even though I haven't validated it independently yet, the initial testing that I did seems to verify that there's quite a lot of potential here in what he's doing. And Mike Marsden was, I didn't realize he was still in contact at all. So when you bring that up, it really brings a new hope to what I was under the awareness of.
Yeah,
please get us in contact, man. I'm begging you.
He's like very secretive, and I will tell you, he did, like, I don't know if this is true or not, but he did tell me that the FBI did approach him and basically said that, like, his invention is like a potential threat to national security, and that if he patented it, they would, issue him a secrecy order that would prevent him from being able to talk about it, or he would get 3 years in prison for each time he discloses it, because that's a federal law. And I don't think he ever actually patented it, but he told me that they got him to sign a contract to give the U.S. government the full legal rights to this particular invention, the Macwan 1. So he says that the U.S. government now technically legally owns this. He gave it away, and they gave him, I mean, millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know how much money, but it was lots and lots of money. I mean, he's well off for the rest of his life, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. But I mean, in reality, it should be billions of dollars. So,
well, I'm fine with just the knowledge, even if it doesn't go public, just understanding that and seeing how it can apply to other things. It's the basic principle here. The basic principle that there is a nonlinear relationship with an accelerated mass on a tangential axis when we're talking about a rotating frame of reference. That's basically the heart of the Macwan 1. What he had figured out is a mechanism to produce the maximization of that effect using a purely mechanical system. And that is not only genius, but it's freaking elegant.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's an x-axis here, a perfect x-axis. But when it's spinning, there would be a whole frame around this. This is just the hub, the internal, like we call it the wedding cake, in the center. But there'd be a frame all around it with bearings. You see how I have like this whole slots for bearings to go here? So this would roll like whoosh, 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 like in Brian St. Clair's. It's like, fucking fat, like 10,000 RPM. It's flying, hauling ass. But And what's happening is then this is also spinning. These things are spinning. Like these are but the crazy thing is they're going straight. They're all technically.
Oh, I agree. The fact that it can still work with a linear axis is pretty surprising. And what I wanted to point out with the Macron 1 design is he already had achieved in the original videos, and you can still find them up on Rumble and YouTube if you look real hard. They're pretty difficult to locate, the Macron 1 videos, but they're still out there floating around. And he still used a linear axis. The difference is that on one of the sides of that rotation, there was a faster acceleration of what we call the active masses. And that made all the difference. But if they were tangential instead of linear, those active masses could have produced a significantly greater effect. And we haven't even gotten into how far we can take that concept, especially when we talk about fluid instead of physical, mechanical rolling mechanisms.
It looks like your rods are a little bit too long, maybe, Ross.
Hidden inside, the real power is these spring poles. You see this PVC pipe? There's these like ridiculously strong springs.
I wish you'd get a flashlight in there, Ross.
Oh, that's why you're having trouble with it, because it has to go past the spring.
But it pushes out. That's the crazy part. But it doesn't ever like expand. It just stays super taut. And in my one, I didn't build it quite right. I fucked up on these guides, so these things get caught up. But Brian's is perfect. So his is smooth and everything is perfectly smooth. And the frame is so strong. Like this is aluminum, so it's flexing and bend. Like, see how it's all flexing and shit? Like the frame, his is all solid steel, so it's super sturdy and nothing flexes. So when you just do this, you just breath of air, you just blow a little bit of air, and this goes whoosh, it perfectly spins with no resistance. Even though there's like this fucking hundreds of pounds of pressure pushing out in these springs, these are fucking like ridiculously car springs hidden inside of here. Pushing out, bang! They want to fucking fly out, but they're like they can't. They're just like push, and then it's transferred through these hidden. See these linear tethers hidden inside these linear wires. They always stay straight. They're like this, whoosh 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 like that. They stay like that.
Keep in mind that the mass is always on one side of that rotation too. So that's the main idea: is that you have you have acceleration, you have a linear, consistent rotation RPM, but the mass stays on one of the two sides of that rotation compared to a center axis.
Yeah, you see these bolts? This is where the masses, the heavy weights, are attached to, and that's that's called the real mass, like the actual spinning gyroscopic mass. But
right.
Then,
so what's relativity tell us? And this is one of those things that at first glance it seems like it's a violation of conservation of momentum, but it's not, because we already understand even within the conventional mathematics, without violating any kind of laws within relativity, when you accelerate a mass, it has a higher relativistic mass than it does at rest. And this is the same reason why when a, say, baseball, for example, or a solid steel bearing is accelerated to some velocity from, say, like 4 foot up, for example. And this was done by Bruce De Palma, a very simple experiment where two different solid spheres with no kind of surface imperfections were launched. The sphere that was accelerated, traveling at a forward velocity with a linear motion, took longer to fall to the ground at a completely flat plane height than did a sphere dropped from that same location from the same height. Why? Because one of those two had a velocity relative to the Earth's mass. And this is very much basic in Einstein's relativity. Even if there are major issues in the mathematics and some inconsistencies, when you accelerate something, it gains a new attribute. And that attribute has to do with the electric and magnetic fields, having to do with permeability and permeativity on the vacuum of all the individual particles that make up its constituent atoms. So this is well accepted within the mathematics. I don't know why it's been such a controversy amongst our community. I guess it's because, well, there's oversimplified mathematics in academia. And that oversimplification leads to a lot of people taking the short road, the easy path, and saying, well, the basic oversimplified equations don't allow this to happen, so we're just going to ignore it. But in reality, when we do the experiments, the results indicate that there is actually a very real phenomena going on here. When you impart energy to something, it's going to behave differently than it would at rest. And that is relative to some stationary object or stationary observer, like you standing there with a camera or measurement equipment or the Earth's gravitational field.
Yeah, so let me, like, real quick, like, so, like, it would be like this. Be like two heavyweights like that and that, right? Two super heavyweights, right? But I mean, we were going to do it in depleted uranium, so they'd be smaller, but it's super heavy.
Yeah, depleted uranium, as well as maybe some mercury in there somewhere if you can incorporate it.
Yeah, U-238s, no problem. I'd be glad to take some of that off your hands too.
I mean, at the most, like tungsten carbide or something really heavy, lead. I think he's using lead. I don't know what he's using right now for his weights. It might just be solid steel for his. I don't know. I mean, he's got good chunks of solid steel, like hockey puck kind of things.
Right. Well, especially with these mechanical systems, we've got to pick a good balance between mechanical strength and physical mass.
Yeah, I mean, but you see how, like,
well, and then if you're moving energy, lead seems like a weird choice because lead sucks in the ion side of things.
But you see how like they move back and forth. But when this whole hub is rotating, they think they're going around in a circle, but in reality they're going like straight. Each one is like on a straight path. So that's that conversion. It's converting angular acceleration and deceleration, straight line
into linear divergence,
into linear acceleration. That's the whole point. Like, but it's angular acceleration and deceleration, both. So it's like the speed up and then a slow down. You slam on the brakes and slow down. So for a quarter of the rotation, it's speed up, and then it's all of a sudden it hits a brick wall. This slows down for a quarter.
And the other 2 quarters of the rotation, it's not playing its active role. So it's always on one side of the axis of rotation, and there is the key.
Well, guys, let me say goodnight really quick. I have to put my child to bed. Thank you so much for having me on, Bernie, and thank you for letting me promo
for coming on, Tim.
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you for blessing us with your time, Tim, and it's absolutely epic that Apec is coming back and looking forward.
Well, and I'm Ross. I would love it if you could demo that. Bernie scooped me. That's okay, Bernie. I'm totally cool.
And Brian St. Clair's machine too. We want to show it on Apec.
Yeah. Bring him on. That's what the conference is all about. So
he's working with Jeremiah Popp right now.
Thank you so much, Tim. And parental duties, understandable and looking good in the new studio and what you got going there, brother. Much love.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's genuinely an honor to be here. So
real quick, Tim, can I show you something real quick, Tim?
Yeah.
So I was saying this we call this the upper hemisphere, and you know the masses are spinning around like this. The heavy masses, you know, the two heavy masses are spinning around, but on this side, the lower hemisphere is you know, there's no masses here. It's just the spring pushing apart, pretending to be mass. So we call this the virtual mass. So, but there's no masses here. See.
It's the tension. It's the tension as if there was a mass there being produced by the spring, but without the actual mechanical weight or the inertia contained by what we call the active masses.
It's the spring is hidden in here, compressed. There's a compressed spring, super hydraulically compressed spring.
Well, even
pushing out.
And even you were talking about it's having a hard time moving past the center part. Even if it's not functional that way, it's still one heck of a demonstration tool. Right, it's a really valuable demonstration tool. So I think it has tremendous value, and the work that you put into it obviously shows. Yeah, I mean, this is something that you have been working on and perfecting. So I love it, man.
Yeah, I definitely I went a little overboard with the springs. Like, they're so unbelievable. I mean, just super strong springs are hidden in here. And Brian's kind of tweaking it. He's got like all different types of springs.
Something I find fascinating is that springs are also essentially solenoids.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So before Tim dashes, I would just like to ask you, BurnEye, for your multiple channel streams, which I'm guessing is the primary mass of the audience watching right now, if you would also post those links in the in the description of your videos instead of simply in the live chat, because a lot of people aren't going to check the live chat. Then if they want to sign up for
I will do it in this
let's put them in there.
Oh, yeah, and thank you guys again.
Change that while it's live. Sorry to cut you off, Tim, but I am ahead of you of spamming the live chat for probably the 6th or 7th time to go to altpropulsion.com and sign up for APEC. And by doing this, you'll be emailed the Zoom link the day of APEC, so you can actually come in and ask your questions and participate and be a part of APEC itself and get to meet and interact with all sorts of ridiculously intelligent geniuses, engineers, inventors, and legends like Tim, Jeremiah, Ross, and the rest that partake in it. Thank you so much, Tim. I understand you've got to go. And I got
thanks again, guys.
Have a great evening, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Much love, brother. And on that note, I'm going to let you guys take over the discussion for a bit while it's very, very quickly starting to move towards below the horizon and out of view. This Death Star thing or planet, maybe Jupiter, maybe Saturn, or maybe Venus. But I doubt it's those three. I believe it's most likely this Death Star Nemesis Planet X possibility. We're about to find out, so I'm going to do that. And you amazing souls, and sorry, Frankie, also, please do take over and
before you go.
anything you would like to, good sir, of your show. Benjamin, because we're also streaming to Benjamin Balderson, Odin's Alchemy. So, by all means, whatever y'all feel. But I will be joining back in a minute. I'll be listening, and hopefully we can get this thing on camera and see what the F it is.
So, Jeremiah, Popp, so you're working with Brian St. Clair now, right?
Well, if you're gonna bring it up, I guess I say yeah. Brian and I have had several conversations, and they have been absolutely pivotal in terms of understanding the relationship of this accelerated mass phenomena. Mm-hmm. I think that Brian has the most elegant way to talk about this stuff so far that I've heard from anybody, and I would highly encourage just looking into his work as it progresses. I mean, he's been pretty frequent with posting about the Pi series, inertial acceleration devices. So definitely something to look into. Now, my personal preference, I prefer solid state. And I can see that the phenomena going on here with an accelerated mass using a mechanical system is completely applicable to a solid state system that uses nuclear resonance or spin momentum to do the same phenomena on a subatomic level.
Hey, if you could do it like on a different type of level, that would be, I mean, the same concept, that would be great. I mean, that I'm all ears, you know what I mean? Like, I feel you're right. Like, if you could do it on the mechanical scale, you can obviously do it on nanoscale, whatever, or liquid scale, or I mean, there's all kind. I was going to do it magnetic scale, like instead of using actual springs, I wanted to have like hidden neodymium magnets that would act as springs. So, like,
actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Ross, because after the first conversation that Brian and I had, the concept got locked into my brain very well, and I built a small magnetic device to test this concept. Now, I haven't actually suspended it on the pendulum yet. It's a little bit too rickety, and according to the strobe tests, I'm getting motion on the other half of the swing, which means that I have motion on the other side of that axial pivot point that I don't want, which is removing the precision of this device. It's causing it to fluctuate a little bit, and it tends to develop resonant nodes. But I think I can correct that yet. I just don't have a closed ring system to really concentrate the flux. But I believe it's completely possible using purely magnetics with no physically mechanical linked springs, pinions, or pivots. And that's just a basic proof of concept. Ultimately, we know that we can spin a nuclear magnetic moment. We know that we can spin a domain, and there's no difference between, say, reorienting the magnetic polarization of a domain with an iron, for example, compared to physically moving a solid mass. And iron's already heavy, so it works really, really well for this. It looks promising in summary. It looks very
Hey, can I ask a question?
Starting out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you're doing electrolysis, why not use, instead of salt water, vinegar or wine or lemon juice? And would that change the whole way the monoatomics work?
Absolutely. Yeah. Electrolysis is just simply breaking apart water into its constituent atoms or another material. But depending on whether you have an alkaline or an acidic mixture, you can get different results. Now, the idea with the salt is that it's neither alkaline nor acidic. You just simply have created an electrolyte, which is conductive, and it can still have a pH of 7, but it can contain a higher conductivity than pure deionized distilled water, which allows you to transfer electromotive force between two different electrodes and separate out what water content is there. Ultimately, you can do electrolysis with distilled water, which is the best way to do it, and this would be the Stanley Meyer stuff.
Well, but isn't distilled water completely non-conductive?
It's absolutely conductive. There's a huge misnomer about distilled water being non-conductive. Distilled water still contains ions. See, it turns out that your simple dihydrogen monoxide molecule can be ionized, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a perfectly balanced and neutral valence spin count in terms of its number of electrons. Some of them are quite mobile. So distilled water is quite conductive. It's just not conductive at metering voltages. So if you stick to multimeter electrodes in distilled water, you might not get a reading. And if you bring them real close, you'll start to see some megohm readings. When you put a significant amount of charge across that, even above 20 volts, and generally I'm working with 5,000 volts and above, it's basically a conductor.
Oh, I see. So if you put high voltage, it becomes a conductor, and it's a resistor.
It does, right? Because electrons are still able to transit through that medium.
Well, that's trippy.
Yeah, so, I can tell you for sure.
What if I were to try to monoatomic gold? What if I try to make monoatomic gold out of I'm sorry?
I said monoatomic gold is a whole different story. And that we can get into.
Oh yeah, I understand. I've looked it up a lot. I've totally looked it up. And there's a bunch of, it's hard to know what it is, right?
Well, that was disappointing. I got it all set up, and then the forest fire smoke above the horizon blocked it.
Oh well. Hey, at least you put in the effort.
But on the good note, there's still a full moon on the other side of my property. Oh, see, now you can see my telescope.
Can you flip your cam so we can get the wide view?
Hold your horses, hey, of course.
One more question. Are all alloys dangerous to use monoatomics? Like you said, starting silver is bad because it's 10% copper and 90% silver.
Is planted. If it all turns to monoatomic and doesn't oxidize and it's just copper silver, should be fine. But if it oxidizes and turns blue, diatomic, instantly getting poison.
Again, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier. If you want to consume something that's been known as colloidal silver, you cannot use any silver at all, any pure silver metal in pure distilled water other than at least 3 nines pure, and you're still accepting that that fourth 9 could be any number of different elements.
Yeah, and if they put lead in it, it's instantly going to hurt you. And like literally any amount of lead in a monoatomic form will instantly like poison and destroy you, and very, very harmful.
I've been consuming it for a super long time. My skin doesn't change color. Like I said, the stuff stays shelf stable. It still contains its electrical charge 5 years down the line. I'm telling you, it has a 5-year shelf life only because that's about the longest that I've actually had a bottle that I haven't fully consumed, and it's still not breaking down after that time. And that's because it's initially starting out with almost 150 volts of potential at every single individual breakdown silver ion. And these silver ions are not individual atoms, they're clusters or chunks of silver, but they contain a high electrical charge. And like I said, they're roughly between the 5 to 7 nanometer size. And that you can tell purely based on the color, knowing that there's no salt in the solution because it's done in distilled water.
What's crazy, I love is hearing plants grow at night. After like warm spring days and the plants just like at night growing and you just hear them moving and creeping and I don't think my camera's capturing it though, my phone. Anywho, I'll be right back. Gonna try to find where the moon is.
I think I'm going to try to jump on this, maybe on a different device. I have no idea how much my signal is getting broken up. If anybody in the live chat wants to tell me if I'm sounding choppy, I would appreciate that.
Not choppy at all for us.
I know for you guys it's probably not, but in the live chat for those viewers, I would like some feedback there, because when I do watch this later, I've found that the discrepancy between what we're hearing and what they hear is oftentimes quite different.
Very true. Very true.
So I'm going to give you a minute. I'm going to go ahead and log in on a different device, which should have a significantly better internet connection, and we'll see. If
everyone's saying the audio is good.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
All right. I shall be right back.
This was a pretty good show so far.
You're fine.
Jeremiah, what do you think about the time mirrors?
Well, when I looked into Kozyrov's time mirrors, specifically, our sort of Nautilus shell curled in mirrors, what's oftentimes avoided when that subject comes up is that it would take somebody with, I hate to use the word psychic or metaphysical aptitudes to stand in the center of that thing. And I've heard that one of the things they bragged about, it was that even people without prior history in metaphysics would be capable of sometimes experiencing strange phenomena, but there was a human aspect to it, an observer aspect to it. And that was the one part that caused me not to do those types of experiments, because what I'm really looking for is sort of a push button receive effect phenomena in almost all of these experiments. And I know that going into the future, there's going to be no way to get around the metaphysical parts of this research. But ultimately, as a scientist and an engineer, what I'm looking for is something that is somewhat devoid of the necessity for a trained individual, where we can make a machine do the same job. And, like Project Looking Glass would be a good example of something like that, where it didn't have to take somebody with some metaphysical background in order to receive some results. Now, whether or not that project ever even existed, I can't say, but just the folklore around what Project Looking Glass was, this plasmatic type of looking into the past or looking into the future viewing system, would be a better way to consider whether or not we can usefully apply a temporal displacement concept.
So there's the moon.
So you are an optimist, right?
Awfully close to a light. Yeah, just rising.
He's a believer. That's what I'm saying, right?
I'm sorry. Was that to me? I'm having a bit of a signal problem here.
Yeah, it's the weird planetary alignment / I don't know what split. But what I'm saying is, you believe, right? You're an optimist about it.
I guess maybe this will be solved when I come on through the other device. Let me go ahead and try to swap over here from what I'm on right now, which is my cell phone, onto a piece of physical hardware. Give me just a moment. Let me jump back in here and swap out.
Cool.
All right, backstage, and as soon as I'm let in, I'll kill this device.
There you be. Yeah, so I'm gonna adjust the telescope, and might as well take a little look-see at the moon. But it is getting pretty hazy. All of the smoke from the forest fires here in Alberta right now. Kind of.
Hey, entering froze my computer. That's awesome. Let me go ahead and try this again. I might have to drop out here for just a couple of minutes.
Okie dokie. Ben, what's going on with you, brother? How are things?
Eating a milkshake. Pretty happy with that.
Milkshake or dope. Oh God.
Yeah, cream top milk and some fresh, really fantastic ice cream. Very curious why he where he was going with the different light waves at night. So the solar panels, and assuming you got the one, assuming anybody has the ones anymore that are
I'd imagine the silver ones, silver solar panels, right? Because silver is used in some solar panels, I believe.
Actually, if I can still be heard here before my connection completely dies, the perovskites. Look into perovskites if you really wanted to find an ideal panel to absorb that deep blue and UV spectrum. That's going to be far more versatile in terms of night capabilities, and also there's something called amorphic solar panels. Many of you are already familiar with that type of solar panel technology and just don't know it. You remember those calculators that you used to play with in school, the old TI series that would work even in a semi-dark room. The amorphic solar panels don't have the same output capability per meter squared as our full polycrystalline and monocrystalline silicon panels, but they have a particularly great attribute. They work in very low light, like say the kind that we have at night. And they're going to be far better at taking data at night. And you can pluck them out of calculators, and you can get calculators in huge numbers on Amazon. Like you can get 40 of them for probably about $25. So just pluck the panels out of there and use those for all your experiments at night.
Well, with normal solar panels at night, you pick up voltage, and in a full moon, you pick up heavy voltage. My system, I have to have 48 volts for my inverter to work, because I've got a 240 volt system. And leading up to the full moon, the voltage starts growing substantially, and on the full moon nights, it'll pull about 60 to 65 volts off of the moon. It doesn't pull any amps at all, but it pulls a whole ton of volts. So I just wonder if that has correlation to the increase in precipitate of the electrolysis of the silver and the increased voltage.
All right, I'm trying to come on with my other account. Just have to wait for Bernie to come back here, and then it should be hopefully functional this time. I'm backstage right now. Just got to be let in. Actually, Frankie can do that.
It's too cold here for ice cream too, but I want some ice cream.
I'm going to play an intro. How about that?
Frankie, better not have the music.
Oh, sorry about that.
Check
1 2. Am I coming through?
What happened to the goats in the trees?
Loud
That
and
was
clear.
cool.
We can hear you well, but Frankie, doesn't the goat one
you
have
gotta
like
be
the
kidding.
goat that gets
My audio just
copyright
crashed.
strikes? I think.
Fifth tries the charm. Here we go.
I'm sorry,
again.
Bernie.
Yeah, you always have technical
Bernie,
issues on a live
what'd you
show,
say?
people.
What happened? I'm sorry. It's probably my fault.
Jeremiah has to pop back in. I don't know if you have admin privileges. If you could.
Oh, I probably do. Geez, sorry. I don't even know what happened.
We appreciate your patience, everybody.
Oh, what's going on? Oh no. Bernie, what happened?
I'm not sure. We're waiting for Jeremiah to rejoin.
Bernie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I don't know what happened.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think Jeremiah's trying. He's back now. He's just trying to connect with a better device with better internet, and it just so happened that Ross and Benjamin also walked away at the same time, as well as and were calling me on the phone, so I was muted. And sorry about that. Okay. I see Jeremiah trying to pop back a couple of times, but it's weak signal and it drops him. Kind of strange. Should we play some more of this video? And do you want to, Frankie, post the link for this video in the private chat, or actually just in the public comments, if you don't mind, the link for it, and then anybody can go see. And we are fulfilling
Absolutely
your request and pledge, and that yeah, good times. Been a good show. Yeah, getting hard crashed right now.
I only tried to play an intro video.
But my question was the one intro that you played before when we did a stream. I remember like it ended up getting me copyright strike, so I think that was the one. I don't think it's an issue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. And that's you.
Yeah.
Only played a few seconds of it, so no worries there with the goats. That's all good. Yeah. So
I was always told to do that because yeah.
Sorry,
there's a time delay.
That's another thing. Yes, for those that get so frustrated with everybody sometimes talking all over each other, it can happen because of all the different time delays and unknown. Poor Ben, you falling asleep there, brother?
Yeah, it's about the end of the show for me. The animals, they don't give a shit.
I guess so.
Yeah, the sun starts coming up, they start screaming. Feed us.
Yeah, right. I get you. So, got to get to bed while it's dark, or they get pretty angry. Good, Ross. How are you, sir? How's okay? You're gonna take off. Do you want me to end it on your channel? Do you want to keep going?
Bed.
So, I'll remove it on your channels then right now.
Yeah.
Or yeah. Okay.
Night, guys.
Good night, Ben. We'll see you next time, brother. Much love.
Yeah, Bernie, I was like always debating whether I should like put this out there, the whole Mac 11 X-plate design, but I mean, it's already out there. Mike Marsden's son, you know, his son took that video of him like years ago, way back in, I don't even know, 04 or 2000 or something. Have you seen that video, Mac 11, Mike Marsden? The two videos?
I'm not sure if I have.
Yeah, he uploaded them like years ago, and then the government took them. I think the government took them down, and then some Spanish guy re-uploaded them onto YouTube, and they're still there on YouTube. And,
okay. Do you have the link for it? Should we try playing it on a channel here? Hopefully not.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a cheesy video. Like his son tried to like add a bunch of like, you know, special effects and like sound to it and stuff. Like, oh, this is all important. The Mac 11. It's all, you know, and like, you know, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a little bit cheesy, a little bit. It's not a great, you know, video. And it's like, if you look at it, you're like, yeah, that's bullshit. Whatever. That's probably not going to work, you know, but
maybe we'll watch it after stream then or something.
It really works.
Fascinating.
It's crazy. I mean, it's like my friend Cleveland Savage just happened to be like, you know what? I'm going to contact this guy and see if he's for real. And contact him. He's like, holy shit, this guy's really smart. He's like, you know, it doesn't seem like he's bullshitting. And then Cleveland went out there to Texas and traveled there and actually went into the warehouse and looked around and met Mike Mars and everything. And then saw it and was like, dude, this guy's for real. He's really building all this stuff. Like an atmospheric engine and the Mac 11 and like this crazy drone thing, this crazy float. It floats. Like it could like lift like literally a 24 pack of beer. Like with this teeny tiny little battery, you could floats around. It's like hardly any, like it's not much of down pressure. It's like the down force goes back into this rim that goes around it, this teeny tiny rim that's just like thin rim. It goes around it, and it's like as it goes out, it goes back in, and then it swirls up, and it's like, and then as it swirls up, it also creates that downforce again. So it's like a double downforce. It's ridiculous. He has all these crazy ideas. He has this fan in his warehouse. He put these little tiny jets on the ends, and like I was telling Jeremiah Popp, it's not a jet engine. It sucks itself forward. So when it's sucking itself forward, it's dribbling out. Instead of thrusting out like hot thrust, it's dribbling out cold air. So as it's spinning around above you, this fan with these little jet engine looking things on the peripheries, the ends, they're like whoosh, 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 making this thing go around in a circle, but they're not spitting. They're like, they're sucking air and they're flowing around in a circle above you. And then all of a sudden this cold air just flows down. You're like, you're like the super cold. There's no like freon. There's no freon or any refrigerant or any like compressor or condenser and all that stuff you have for air conditioning systems. It's just spinning around in a circle, and it's like literally condensing air as it's spinning around in a circle fast. And so you get this this cold air just flows down upon you. Super energy efficient, not very technical. You don't have to have like HVAC guys come in and with huge tanks and change your freon and change your refrigerant and all this stuff. Oh, my air conditioner went out. Oh, it's a simple fucking spinning fan that spins around in a circle above you.
Mike does. Sorry, finally saw your email. Just replied with the link to join. Same for you, Anthony, as well as Grandmaster UV. If you'd like to join the panel, I emailed all three of you, and let me know in the live chat if anybody else is interested in coming on the panel and talking some science, physics here. I still got a good 45 hour left in me. Maybe we'll take it to 3 hours. But I let you take it away a little bit here, Frankie, Jeremiah, and Ross, while I go back outside and get it set up to look at the moon at least a little.
Where's Jeremy Reese?
Bernie, I'm fading fast.
You're fading fast, Frankie, so you got to go, brother. You want me to end it on your stream?
I can definitely do 20 more minutes. I could do a little bit longer. And I have a lot to say still. But
yeah, take it away,
I definitely got to crash pretty soon. It's late for me.
For sure, brother. No worries.
I'm on the East Coast.
Yes. So it's quite late out there.
Frank, what did you think about the Mac 1.1?
I'm sorry?
Well, huh?
Frank, what did you think about the Mac 1.1?
I don't know what you mean.
I mean, like, your general thoughts?
You have to explain what is Mac 1.1?
That machine that I was showing, that crazy rotational hub.
You know, I don't think he's going to be familiar with the original, and maybe you can pull up a quick video clip of what that thing really did and how amazing it truly was.
Yeah, I've never seen it before, so I don't know, but I'm interested, that's for sure. Beyond that, is it some sort of anti-gravity thing or a time-space thing?
No, yeah, it's like a potential spacecraft propulsion system without rockets.
It's a gyroscopic one.
Yeah, a gyroscopic inertial propulsion instead of rocket propulsion. So rotational propulsion, like electric.
The Mac 1.1 is a mechanical rotational device that takes advantage of something called relativistic mass in a really unique way.
Does it have bearings?
It has quite a few of them.
Tons of bearings. There's like a gazillion bearings throughout the whole thing. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh man. Gnarly, right?
No, just remember, there is a mass energy equivalency. When you impart acceleration or momentum into any physical mass, it now has that new property of having something we call relativistic mass, which it doesn't possess at rest compared to the observer's frame of reference.
And then
how close do you think? Let me ask you guys all something. How do you think? What's the gnarliest thing that you see before you die, as far as technology goes in our world?
Inertial propulsion for me.
You think it's gonna happen?
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's already happened. It's already happened. It's not a question of whether or not it will happen. It's a question of whether or not it will get into the public hands.
I mean, in the mainstream, in the public.
Well,
yeah, we're working on that. We're working on that.
If you're talking about stuff that you're likely to see in your lifetime, World War III is very likely.
We really very need to prevent that from happening. Yeah, it's
lots of really interesting technologies are likely to be used. Is all I'm gonna say.
Another war will certainly not be had by the people.
Mike does. I replied with the link if you'd like to join, as well as Grandmaster UV and Anthony William. And if anybody else would like to join, email me and I can send you the link. Same to you as well, EBT, Enslaved by Truth. If you would like to join, let me know. I can email the link. And reminds me, rest in peace to Davey Crocco, and the live streaming community podcasting, a loss this week, and that there was a couple of memorial streams for him tonight. And he was a very good guy. He got censored on YouTube a lot for asking the right questions and talking about the right topics. And yeah, just tragedy. And on that note, please go back to physics.
What do y'all think about the FBI reaching out to Mike Marsden and doing all that? Getting him to sign a contract and trying to take this technology.
2 words I would use are typical and tyrannical.
That's, yep. I mean, and he was like, he's like about 80 now. So that was like when he was in his like probably 70. So I feel like it's almost like you're intimidating an old man. You know what I mean? Like scaring him, showing up in suits and have guns on their sides. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of intimidating a little bit. You know?
No, that's nothing new for them. They've been doing that since basically they existed, since they switched over from being the Department of Alien Affairs, who collected all the Tesla stuff. And by the way, alien does not mean extraterrestrial in that case. It was just people from foreign countries in the United States. And that became the FBI and stemmed out into a whole bunch of other horrible things after Project Paperclip. So, I mean, it's never stopped, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, basically he said, like, he wanted to launch it and not, obviously he wanted to do it legally. So he had to contact the FAA and then say, hey, I'm going to be launching something into space. And then they're like, wait a second, you know what I mean? Because that's really monitored stuff. Like, that's like SpaceX stuff. Like when you're launching something into space, you have to get like permission from the FAA to do it. And so he was like, okay, he went through that official permission thingy where you like fill out a little government document thingy and you send it, I forgot how you do it, but it's like this, Tesla, I mean, SpaceX does it a lot. Other CubeSat companies do it and and there's a bunch of companies that do it. But he did it, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh shit, they went to his place. And we're like, what? You're gonna launch what? And then they like realized like this guy's not joking. And I think one thing led to the other. And I mean, who knows? They probably talked to people at Skunk Works and data and all this stuff, and we're like, yeah, let's get that technology.
I just really want to real quick interject. Thank you, John Supp. I just want to say that I noticed you've donated $13, and we really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Do you guys remember the movie with the farmer who launches a rocket?
Hugely appreciated, John.
Oh, that movie, the farmer, the rocket farmer?
Yeah. What do you guys think of that?
I had that movie.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to run up and try to get the moon through the telescope.
That's crazy you have a telescope, Bernie. You have, like, all kinds of stuff. That's
literally
crazy.
Built it from scratch with my dad at the age of 6. So it was mostly my dad, but it was pretty epic. It worked for decades.
You have a whole laboratory. You have like insane amount of stuff. It's cool.
Minus some key equipment though, but we're working on that and going to be doing a couple fundraiser and GoFundMe things to get some more technical lab equipment for furthering the research and experiments.
Probably like the best guy that was ever on Apec was Jason Verbelli, the Verbs.
I agree. I know. And the guy, it's fucking YouTube fucked him and deleted both his channels claiming medical bullshit. And he's been like depressed ever since. And I don't blame him because he had 2 pretty large channels with like a lifetime, decades of his, like at least a solid decade, if not 2's worth of all of his lectures, teachings, and next level electromagnetics. And yeah, I actually emailed him the link to join to this stream. I email him every time, and sadly he has not joined us thus far, but hopefully he does come on one day soon with us here.
Yeah, he's definitely on to something with that whole magnetic energy system that he's been working on. Eventually they're going to get that thing working. But I mean, his whole thought process of the whole universe is really kind of strange, because somebody was talking about it earlier. Well, hey, Anthony. And so it's basically like the entire universe is permeated with this matrix, with this 3-dimensional XYZ matrix, that's like subdividable. So each cube It's like Walter Russell called it the cubic wave field of space. The cubic. It's like 3 mirrors.
Yes.
It's like
I know
3
exactly what you're talking about.
It's like 3 mirrors, like all at 90-degree angles to each other. And so they're reflecting, and they're basically, everything is an illusion. It's all just a self-reflection of a self-reflection of a reflection 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 of a reflection. It just keeps going on and on forever. It just keeps self-reflecting down to the tiniest cubic wave fields, but it never ends. It's like infinite. It's infinitely large and infinitely small.
Well, so, I would have to actually kind of disagree with the idea that it's infinite.
Oh my God! Sorry, I have to interrupt. Sorry, I am so sorry, John Sup, who just donated 2 super chats and we were shouting out, and I accidentally on my phone blocked him on the live chat, and it deleted all of his comments. And I am so sorry. I just unblocked you, and my God. Did not mean to do that.
Things happen.
Ridiculousness.
Oh man. Yeah. Oh, you gotta love the typical scripts for this channel. It makes it certainly interesting, but by all means, certainly wasn't the intention. On your commentary, Ross. So I don't know if y'all want to hear a really strange and esoteric idea. If you will, entertain it for a minute, but I generally don't get super weird into the things that I can't absolutely prove, but I had a fantastic, phenomenal vision that has totally changed the way that I look at this stuff and led to quite a few successful experiments. And in this vision, what I've seen is a geometry of the underlying lattice structure of the universe, if you will. It's a geometric superposition field composed of physical particles, which we would call a positron-electron pair, also known as positronium, each with their own individual orientation in a tetragonal manner, but they are interrelated and they tend to flip, and they each have their own magnetic moment. So if you consider the entirety of what used to be called aether, the vacuum, the medium, that thing that transfers a photon from one place to the other, even if it's purely electrical and magnetic, well, that can actually be explained entirely through the phenomena of the density of the aether or the density of the vacuum. So we know the vacuum has a variable refractive index. Refractive index is considered for most situations to be a constant. We have the cosmological constant. We have the fine structure constant. We have these things that we consider to be fairly flat. And the reason why they're considered flat in today's modern physics is because it makes the mathematics far easier to compute and calculate. Well, it turns out they're actually not linear, extremely not linear, and it doesn't take a huge amount of energy to modify the density of that vacuum. So if you consider that the physical universe itself is made up of these individual nodes, if you will, that each have their own magnetic polarization, have angular spin or momentum, and are made of physical particles that have real mass, but they are at the smallest possible orbital radius, each with their own information horizon, then we can do interesting stuff. So for example, if we pump in some amount of electromagnetic energy, and these two particles are bound together and rotating at the fastest velocity possible and the smallest diameter possible, so they're compacted into the smallest physical radius in this tetragonal type of interrelationship geometry, we know that they are there because photons, which are not physical matter, can produce right out of the vacuum from nothing a separation of a positron and an electron. So how can we get these physical particles that apparently don't exist prior to the photon excitation to come out of nowhere in a vacuum space with no physical matter in it and then pop out at exactly 180 degrees to each other? Well, the logical explanation is they were already there. We simply couldn't observe them. And the secondary evidence for this is that our photonic excitation can travel an arbitrary distance. It changes. It's not necessarily the exact same distance from our two laser sources that interact. So if we take two laser sources, each containing a minimum of 511 kiloelectron volts, and they interact in some fixed focal point within the vacuum, we can force the vacuum to become matter. When that matter exists, that vacuum, or those nodes that already existed, split apart. And now we have physical masses, or real matter, that can then be moved about with magnetic and electric fields and recombined. Now, the word physics uses for this recombination event is annihilation. But do they really annihilate? No, of course they don't annihilate, because if they didn't exist in the first place and they were made from nothing and they recombine, well, they give back the energy that we put into them. So when they do actually separate, they give out 2 photons, each of 511 kiloelectron volts, exactly what we put into them as their minimum requirement, or a total of 1,022 kiloelectron volts, 1.022 mega electron volts. So if we consider that the fabric of the universe itself is made of this stuff, positronium, if you will, well, that means that we can change our position three-dimensionally within space-time by separating this fabric apart and changing its geometry and recombining it behind our ship. Now we have a basis for a real physical warp drive with something that's tangible and testable, and also is not incompatible with the evidence we've already received from particle accelerator tests. It's an out there idea, but it's not incompatible. And that's the great thing about it. But yeah, just back to that commentary of what you said, Ross, there's definitely a real lattice structure to the universe. And it does tend to create geometries all the way from the very small, or as below, to the very large as above. You're muted, by the way, Ross. Sorry. Hey, Ross, you're muted. You're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's like a it's not like a physical lattice. It's almost like a virtual lattice. Like, I mean, it's almost like when you look at yourself in a mirror and you see yourself like opposite, you're kind of like, oh, that's another. It's sort well, it's really weird. It's almost like, is that really me or am I really me? You know what I mean? Like, you know, it looks like me, but it's not really me. But it thinks it's me, but I'm really me. But is it really me or am I really not me? You see what I mean? It's this like crazy, weird phenomenon where it's like this reflection of you.
In a manner of speaking, this is where we would get our theoretical requirement for negative energy when it comes down to the Alcubierre warp drive. And this is what Lenz figured out, is that we can use positive energy to create these same types of phenomena, because there's already a present background energy or a density. And I can say it this way: the vacuum of space is heavy. It is not weightless. It is not empty. There's a reason why light has a finite velocity, why it doesn't accelerate to infinity when it gets away from the gravitational field of a massive body like Earth or within our solar system. The fact that it actually hits some finite velocity at all tells us a tremendous amount about this field fabric. It's been called the cosmic lattice. It's been called the field fabric. It's been called the underlying geometry of the universe. It's been known by many names, from alchemical traditions dating back well over 1,000 years to modern day physics trying to describe its properties.
The quantum foam. I've heard the word quantum foam be used. That's another word I've heard. But yeah, Jason Verbelli really was trying to convey that it's sort of like within this three-dimensional lattice structure of the entire universe, like each photon is not really a photon. It's like a reflection of the previous mirror. So,
well, if you will, let's generate a photon here. Let's generate a photon in a theoretical mental model here. If we take an electron, which is considered a particle regardless of what it actually is, and we accelerate it very quickly and then decelerate it very quickly, the fact that it has an electric field is going to produce a wave. And that wave, as it travels away from the acceleration, deceleration of this physical particle called the electron, is going to travel outwards in through the vacuum in that space between where there's no matter. And we call that wave that travels through the vacuum a photon. But the question is, what is it actually made of and why does it have a finite velocity? Well, that photon is actually a repolarization of all those individual nodal points within that lattice structure of the universe. And as they flip around and they communicate with each other, Well, there is exactly where we're getting our electric and our magnetic fields. Now, a magnetic field technically doesn't exist. It's what we see as an electric field viewed from 90 degrees. So we just have moving electric fields, and when we look at them from the side, we call that a magnetic field.
Maybe the ether or substrate or whatever you want to call it is physical, but it's non-reactive. It's some version of reacting
physical,
with a magnetic
it's
field.
It's not accessible directly until we split it apart, but it still has real physical tangible properties. And the two most important of those tangible properties are permeativity and permeability, which is epsilon and mu in our modern physics, which means that just like, say, iron can be overly saturated with too strong of a magnetic field, or a dielectric can be overly saturated with too strong of an electric field to the point that they break down. The point which the vacuum breaks down at is called the Schwinger limit, where we put in 1022 kiloelectron volts of photonic energy, and it breaks apart into its constituent particles, the positron-electron pair.
Sounds like a definitely electric and magnetic related.
And of course, it has many other properties. It has mass, it has density, and that's what gives us our time constants. That's where we get our cosmological constant and our fine structure constant from, is these physical properties of this variable refractive index, which acts like a superfluid bit of matter that has weight.
Hypothetically, if you put enough light in one spot, you end up with a black hole, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's what we call a Kugelblitz.
Yeah, indeed. And then we found out, of course, that black holes are also not this closed system or a truly isolated part from the universe, but they radiate out energy as they are converting. So they do require a continuous, if you will, consumption of matter to convert into photonic energy in order to be self-sustaining. Otherwise, they boil themselves out and become nothing. They'll eventually pop out.
Maybe there's an actual body in the center of it, only it's cold.
Oh, the other strange thing, and this is
Hey,
one
listen,
that
guys, I'm not sure if Bernie is back yet.
Go ahead.
I gotta shut the. I am
shut always
the
around,
I'm not
Frankie,
sure if his
just around the corner. Don't you worry, my friend. So, yeah, if you gotta shut
Sorry,
it down,
dude. I'm like,
on your channel right now, and
it'll be easy for you.
Keep going. Sorry. Any last questions? Good, Frankie, and I'll keep it running here for a bit, but I can end it on your channel right now if you want. Oh, you already did. Perfect. Or
yeah,
did you?
Easy enough. Thank you so much, dude.
Yeah,